The book took 4 years. I have 3 wonderful co-authors. We started because I was locked in my apartment wiping cardboard boxes for dinner in the beginning of COVID. And I turned to Christine after reading a research paper out of the San Francisco Fed about pandemics, plagues, what happens after them when it comes to economics, not disease, but economics. And that triggered this book, and 4 years later, the book is finished. We looked in the book about the Federal Reserve and what it did in the United States with 3 pandemics. Some people in the room can remember at least 2 of the 3, COVID being recent. And I'm going to not spend a lot of time on the book. I'll give you a very quick summary. In a pandemic, as opposed to a hurricane, earthquake, other disasters, a pandemic, you lose people, but not capital. All the others affect capital. When you lose people to death unexpectedly, what happens to the capital? It gets redistributed. Poor people, the heirs of poor people, don't inherit very much. Rich people, their heirs, inherit a lot. Per capita wealth goes up. What else happens? You have fewer people. When you have fewer people, the least productive enterprise closes. It fails. In the antiquity days, it was the least productive farmland. It was allowed to lie fallow. In modern times, you get a different form of productivity. We're seeing it right now with AI. What happens? Productivity per capita goes up. Now, what I have just defined is wealth per capita going up, even though the division between rich people and poor people widened. And productivity per capita went up. When you get those 2 things, after the pandemic shock, which is wages, inflation, debt problems, restructuring, all the shocks, what happens next? Inflation goes down. Something else happens. Look at the blue line. That is the neutral. That's the R star. That's the classic definition of the neutral interest rate. Started with Wicksell in Sweden 130 years ago. If you don't get a war and the neutral interest rate, the natural neutral interest rate, goes down, asset prices go up. I stood on this stage a year ago and forecast an S&P that would go up thousands of points. There may be a clip of it, Mike, somewhere. And people said, no, why? How can that happen? Because the neutral interest rate's going to go down. And it is doing so right now. And if it is not disrupted, pandemics, plagues, have a long shadow. Initial shock, wages up, inflation up. All this is documented in the book. We studied 314 epidemics, plagues, pandemics in recorded history over 3,800 years. They're in the book. 2 things disrupt this outlook, and evidence that it works is in the Roaring '20s, after World War I, and after the Spanish flu, which, by the way, was from 1917 to 1921, even though John Barry's book only says 1918. What happened after? You had the Roaring '20s, no inflation. Why? Neutral interest rate went down and stayed down for 6 years. There's the book. There's the website. I would invite you to take a look.